right. Hey everyone, my name is John Nerrill. I help professionals who are ambitious about their careers create their next advancement opportunity. I want to welcome you to my weekly Facebook Live. This is show number 48. And today we're talking about 5 tips to running a more effective meeting. I want to give a special shout out and thanks to everyone who posted comments on my Facebook page yesterday about their meeting pet peeves and what drives them nuts about going to meetings and things that really frustrate them. So hopefully you're going to get some information today that's really going to address some of those things. And if you find today's information useful, I hope you incorporate it. If you find it really useful and you know someone that would benefit, please do me a favor and share the video with them. It'd be great to just kind of push this message a little bit forward. This is something I feel so strongly about. And when I work with my one-on-one clients, as we talk about leadership and we talk about how they run meetings, these are exactly some of the things that we talk about. If you haven't had a chance to check out my website, it's johnnerrill.com. There I have a free offer called 3 Steps to Creating Your Next Advancement Opportunity Without Feeling Overwhelmed. It's a resource designed to help you listen, lean in, and step forward as you go ahead and create whatever is next for you in your career. Simply fill out the form on the website. You'll get the workbook, and then it also enrolls you into my email community where I email everybody Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 a.m. Awesome. It's great to see everyone here. Here is tip number 1 for running a more effective meeting. Respect time. Effective meetings start on time, and at best, they even end a few minutes early, but you definitely want to end on time. Look, we're all busy, and in the workplace, we are oftentimes running around from meeting to meeting to get where we need to get. And when people don't start meetings on time, everything simply just gets pushed back. And it is disrespectful and unprofessional when we don't respect our colleagues' time for coming to our meetings. So how do you do that? How do you ensure that your meetings start on time and you end on time? You know, I can remember going to some meetings and it would take the facilitator a few minutes just to get the call-in number started or the technology working and things like that. And I understand that when you've got meeting after meeting after meeting, it may be really difficult. If you need to ask someone to help you to get all the meeting stuff set up so you can get in there and run your meeting as best as possible, do it. But getting to a meeting and not starting it on time communicates the following messages. It communicates that the people who are attending your meeting, that their time's not important. It also sets a message that if it happens again, your people who attend your meeting will not show up on time. They won't. In fact, it's even going to be a running joke that your 1 o'clock meeting really starts at 10 after and there's no need to come on time. You also want to be careful that anybody new who's joining the team, that those messages aren't communicated as well. Remember that our new employees want to start off on the right foot, quote unquote. They want to make sure they're making a really good impression. And if they start showing up late to meetings or they show up when everybody else does, they've simply fallen into the culture that has been set by you for whenever you have a meeting. And my question to you is that really the tone that you want to set? Meetings, when the meetings start on time, it is all about business and getting through what needs to be covered in that meeting. It's not, hey, I'm just going to run in here and then I'm going to drop my stuff off and go get a drink or run to the bathroom. All that stuff needs to be taken care of ahead of time. You get to the meeting and you are there and you are ready to go. And tip number 2 is something that I have done in any meeting I've facilitated really for the past 20 years. And that's been all about setting norms. You know, we set norms because people like to know how to play. They like to know what the behavioral and professional expectations are for the meeting. Don't assume that people are just going to know how you're going to want them to behave in your meeting. One of the norms that I always set in my meetings comes way, way back in my education days, which was challenge ideas and not people, or challenge ideas and not the person. And I always establish that norm, and I explain what that means, because in meetings, it's good to have some conversation, and we want people to express their ideas and thoughts when it's time for discussion. It is never about dinging them for an idea that they have or a thought that they have around a particular agenda item. We can get curious about the idea, we can ask questions about it, but we never want to professionally attack or disrespect someone in the process. And maybe you're thinking, well, I've run a meeting for a while, there's really no need for me to do that. I'm going to encourage you to go back and revisit that. How well does anybody new coming to your meeting know how to behave in your meeting and know what you expect? Norms simply give us ground rules for how to play. That's all we're looking for. I recently gave a workshop to a group of executive MBA students at NYU Stern at their DC campus at the beginning of the month. And I set norms for the presentation, and I talked about this norm in particular. And someone in the audience raised his hand and he said, well, what if someone does attack me? And what if someone does professionally disrespect me? And I explained to him that it's my job as the meeting facilitator or the workshop facilitator to hold everyone accountable to the norms, because we just agreed on them. I asked everybody to agree to the norms, and I got a rousing yes from everybody. That means we're in agreement about how to play. And if somebody doesn't play by those norms, it's my job as the facilitator to remind them about the norms they agreed upon. And I also tell everyone that they get to hold me accountable to the norms as well. You know, maybe one of those things is you want technology to be out of sight. Rick commented on the thread earlier about, you know, making sure you put phones away so they're not a distraction. I've shared in a previous video that when our phones are out on the table and we're having a conversation with someone, this takes precedence. This is the distraction. This means that if this goes off, the person I'm talking to, I need to get this. Unless there's a life-threatening situation or a dire situation where you need to have this out, just let them know that. But in general, put the phone away. Put the phone away so you can focus on the people sitting across from you at the meeting, so you can focus on what needs to get done. All right. Number 3, when it comes to running an effective meeting, is about stating very clear objectives for what you want to accomplish in the meeting. That means that you have an agenda, and the agenda lists things that you plan to cover during the meeting. If you're running an hour-long meeting, it is your job as the meeting facilitator to make sure that you're not overloading the meeting and you're going to end up not getting everything done. It's understandable if conversations ensue and you need to spend a little more time on a particular item that you may not get to everything on the agenda. That's understandable. But if you're writing an agenda that begins with point A and goes through double N, that's like almost 40 agenda items there. Knock it off. Don't do that, right? Set the agenda, set the objectives for what you want to discuss, and engage the people in the conversation about what the meeting needs to be about. Without setting a clear objective, you have no way of circling back to determine whether or not your meeting was successful or not. And I'm defining success as you being able to get through the objectives of your meeting. When I facilitated training, and I've worked with people on delivering training, and they set these, really big presentations, and that's great. I always ask them to go through and timestamp everything to see if they're really going to get through everything. Doesn't always look good if you set these objectives and you never cover them during your meeting. When we talk about trust, and we talk about trust being a really, really important factor in a team. If you've read Patrick Lencioni's book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, the foundational point of building an effective team is an establishment of trust. Well, trust is repeated behavior over time. If every time you go to a meeting, you're not accomplishing all of your objectives, well, then it just becomes commonplace that whatever on the agenda, you're just not going to get to. So set the clear objectives and set a really good agenda to run an effective meeting. All right, number 4 is what I like to call educate, inform, and support. When we come to a meeting, because we have to learn something. There's something that the facilitator wants to communicate. And in that communication, we as the participants have to learn something. Your meetings, your effectively run meetings, need to have an education component in it. Now, it might be about simply just getting updates on various projects that are being run, or there's information that needs to be shared around competing deadlines and how we're going to prioritize to get some things done. But it's also your job as a facilitator to ensure that your meeting is there to support your team members. It's not about standing up in front of them and throwing out all this information at them, and they're supposed to walk away and figure out what to do with it. It's our job as meeting facilitators to really have that element of support in there to ensure that their questions are answered and everything that they need is either addressed or, in the best case scenario, a resource is allocated for them or given to them in order to get the job done that they need to perform. But if our meetings don't encompass education, information, and support, why are we there, right? We meet because there's a purpose. And there's a purpose because it's important to get everyone in the room, physically or virtually, to share some information so everybody hears it at once. If you can put it into an email, there's no need to meet. If you can communicate something by email, there's no need to bring everybody together at the same point in time. That's a really good barometer of how important your meeting is. Don't just meet for the sake of meeting. Meet with a purpose. And that purpose comes back to your objectives, a very clear and established agenda, and the desire and importance to educate, inform, and support. And lastly, number 5 is all about creating a space for the people on your team to simply come together and express their questions, their frustrations, and their solutions. So if you subscribe to my email list, you should have noticed, or you might have noticed, that in the PS I was putting in there about I'm going to share one tip on today's Facebook Live that's going to allow you to have wine at your meeting. And I spelled wine, W-H-I-N-E. I believe there is a place for whining at meetings. And let me explain what I mean by that. Sometimes people need to express their frustrations. And when you have trust and you have the respect of the people on your team, meetings can be a safe space to do that. But we need to ensure, based on the norms that we set, that whining isn't done solely for the sake of whining. I like to call it, it's whining with a solution at the end. I can remember going to meetings and hosting meetings and having people on my team get really frustrated over organizational processes or workload and a lack of resource allocations. And it was important for me to hold the space for them so they could express that, because it allowed them to have a voice or a say in the matter. But I always made sure that anytime someone whined or complained or expressed their frustration, that it was all about moving them toward a solution at the end. Because if we just allow space for people to whine, people feed off of that. And that can become some real negative energy in your meeting. They often say it's actually referred to as bird caging, where they'll distract the facilitator and then the group kind of gravitates toward this particular point. And then next thing you know, the whole entire meeting is derailed. So what I used to do is I used to set norms where if people wanted to whine, they could, but it was only for about 30 seconds to a minute. And by the end of their time, they had to come up with a solution, or they had to share a solution, because otherwise all we do is wallow in the whine and we never get anywhere. One of the people whom I used to work with at a previous job came up with this genius concept for her team meeting where she had about, I want to say maybe 6 or 8 people in her meeting. And shout out to Mary Zaki on this one, because she just nailed this and I loved it when I saw it. She gave people these little glasses of wine cards, and it was for, I want to say, I think it was for like a minute. But they could have a minute of wine time to express their frustration. And once their wine was all used up, then they would have to ask somebody else for their wine in order to continue their argument or their frustration. And what she found out was that after the first couple of weeks, people didn't want to use their wine anymore. They really heard themselves expressing all that frustration and never moving to a solution. And people were really protective of their wine too. Someone said, "Can I borrow your wine? Can I have your wine?" They'd be like, "No," because they didn't want to hear them complain and gripe either. I had a team member one time who was so frustrated over some things at work. And I get it. And I understood where those frustrations were coming from. But she called me up and she would just complain, and I'd never get a solution out of her. And so one day I said to her, look, I get it. You need someone to vent to, and I'm happy to listen to it for a little bit, but we got to get to a solution. So can we make an agreement that if you call me up and you need a vent, you just say to me, "John, I need a vent." And I'm going to put 3 minutes on the clock. But at the end of those 3 minutes, that conversation has to transition into a solution. And if it doesn't, I'm going to hang up the phone on you. Can we agree to that? And she said, yes. So, all right. So now we've got an agreement in place. We set some ground rules about how we're going to show up. So sure enough, the following week, she calls me up. She's like, "John, I got a vent." I'm like, "All right, setting the timer, 3 minutes, go." And she went. And she was griping and complaining, and she was frustrated, and I got it. And I'm like, "Hey, we're at 2 minutes. 2 minutes and 30 seconds, need a solution." I'm telling her this, right? And she's going, and I go, 10 seconds, 5 seconds, and she's going. And at 3 minutes, I hung up the phone. Hung it up. And I didn't pick up the phone and call her right away. She didn't pick up the phone and call me right away, because that was the agreement. She broke the agreement. And I get it. She was frustrated, but I had given her more than enough time to express the frustration she had over this particular incident. So I waited about 5 minutes, called her back. And the first thing she said to me was, "I can't believe you hung up the phone on me." And I said, "I can't believe you broke the agreement. We had an agreement. You didn't play by the rules here." So I said, "So what's the solution?" Because if we're not talking about a solution, this conversation's over. You want to know how many times that happened? Once. It happened once. Because she knew that every time we got together to talk, I would hold some space for her if she needed it, but we had to get to a solution. So we talk about effective meetings. If you need to hold the space for people on your team to whine a little bit, it's fine. It lets you get information about their frustrations. As a leader, it's important for you to hear from the people on your team, but you can't let them wallow in it. You got to get them to proposing a solution or an idea so they get on the other side of it. And that's how you can allow to have a little bit of whine in your meeting. So again, recapping real quickly, those 5 tips to running an effective meeting are: respect time, set norms, state clear objectives, which include having an agenda about what you're going to cover during the meeting, educate, inform, and support, and lastly, hold the space for people if they need to express their frustrations or to have a little whine, but always move them to solution. As we wrap up, just remember that these 5 tips are simply some suggestions to help you run a more effective meeting, because it gives structure around how you and everyone in your meeting are going to play. So knowing that we can start a meeting on time and we can end it on time is a first and foremost communication about respect. And we always want to make sure that we respect people's time and input in meetings, because whether that meeting is a half hour or an hour or however long it is, we've got other things in the day to go to, and we've got life outside of work. And so it's important for us to honor those things as well. So be respectful of time in meetings. And I'm going to do the same thing. And I'm going to end this a few minutes early today since we have no more comments. Oh, hold on here. John, meetings that devolve into complaints or tangents are huge time waste. Definitely better to avoid that. Right, John, I understand that. Absolutely. But we want to make sure... we want to make sure, though, that if the meeting facilitator is allowing that, then we've got to get them to a solution, right? We always want to make sure we kind of monitor ourselves in the process, that we're not monopolizing that time by complaining so much. Yes, when we have objectives, it allows us to stay on track and stay focused. And that's the job of the meeting facilitator. The meeting facilitator needs to either interrupt if they're going off on a tangent, or pull them back really, really quickly into whatever the topic at hand is into the meeting, and to keep those objectives honored in the meeting. But I definitely agree with you that getting out of control with that can be an absolute time suck and really, really destructive to the meeting. I hope I got your intent in that comment. And Jeff, what do you do about a coworker who takes 20 minutes to get a 2-minute point across? Jeff, I'm laughing because I get it and I feel your pain. And hopefully you're not like thinking that I took 20 minutes to take 2 minutes to get my point across today. No, I know you well enough, not that at all. Again, there's a facilitation skill about interrupting that can be done professionally and politely. I can tell you, when I've come across that in meetings before, I've just simply said, excuse me, I got to interrupt you. We need to be respectful of time. We need to be respectful of other people in the room. Can we get to the point? And just kind of bring that, they may not even be aware that they're taking as much time to make their point. But if we just let people ramble on in meetings, that's another way where meetings can get really dysfunctional pretty quickly. Again, it goes back to the norms. Another norm that I said is about being additive, not repetitive. Okay, if you're going to say something, you're adding on to the conversation, you're not stating what somebody else already said. So maybe for another Facebook Live, I share with you a little bit about the importance of norms and why we set them in certain things. And I'll share the ones that I set with you. I set with people in a meeting and such like that. But a good facilitator knows how to intrude, and intrude politely and professionally to help them get to the point. So that would be my suggestion there. So great comments, both of you. Thank you so much. We'll take one more quick look. All right. We're going to wrap it up. I hope everybody has a great Wednesday. If you're watching this video on YouTube, I hope you give me a like or subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're watching this either on my website or on Facebook, please click share and send it to someone whom you think might benefit from today's content. I wish you a great rest of the day. Stay safe, everyone. Be well, and I'll see you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock for another Facebook Live. Take care. Enjoy the day.